Mr. Yousef, the World Economic Forum is launching the Arab World Competitiveness Report today. What are the main findings of the report?
By and large, the most important message that comes out of the report is that in today's globalizing, internationalizing world economy, countries that seek to maintain high rates of economic growth have no choice but to focus on the factors that enable them to sustain integration, deepen cooperation, and expand the realm of dynamic sectors within their economies. For the Arab world in particular, this means looking beyond the immediate effect of the oil boom and focusing on the sets of policies, institutions, human capital, education, health, and all the various components that will enable them not only to reap the benefits of the current economic boom, but to also sustain the growth momentum into the medium and long term.
What are the recommendations that we can give to the 13 MENA countries covered in the report?
The value added in this year's report is that rather than make a blanket set of generalizations for all the countries of MENA, a one-size-fits-all approach, the report, by construction, divides the countries into groups depending on the stage of development in which they are and the sets of priorities they face. So, for example, a country like the United Arab Emirates needs to be more focused on issues that deal with business sophistication, innovation, research, and development. A country in the second stage of development, such as Tunisia, needs to focus on market efficiency, the smoothness with which institutions work, and the processes that allow it to go into a more advanced stage of development. And yet, a country in the third stage of development, such as Egypt or Mauritania, has to focus even more on the basic fundamentals of development and growth, such as education, infrastructure, and an overall enabling environment for business development.
So we don't find a ranking as that one country comes out on top? And
we do. We still do that. So a country such as the United Arab Emirates, followed by Qatar, or more generally the small Gulf countries, clearly are doing better than others. They are in the more advanced stage of development. Their priorities are much more about fine-tuning and refining policies that seem to be working at the moment. Countries that are in the second stage of development or a less advanced stage of competitiveness need to still worry about things they've worried about for the last 10 to 15 years. And yet countries that are at the third stage of development have to be even more focused on basic fundamentals that we understood for the last 50 years to be important drivers of development. I think this particular message is especially important and especially relevant because the notion of competitiveness is context specific. Egypt's priorities are different from those of the UAE. Tunisia's priorities are different from those of Bahrain. Countries should look at each other and should compete and should mimic one another, but they need to pay attention to the national context in which their policies are framed and in which development and growth ultimately has to take place.